Incredible twist, desperate mother sells wedding ring for baby formula, CEO X revealed as buyer. Sarah felt the weight of the world as she stood behind the counter, pouring coffee and serving greasy fries at the diner, her fingers instinctively swiping at the remnants of spilled ketchup. The familiar hum of chatter mixed with the comfort of worn leather booths, but today it felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Her heart tightened with the knowledge that the stack of bills on her kitchen table grew higher every day, each paper a reminder of the struggle to provide for her newborn daughter, Lily. As she moved from table to table, the faded pictures on the walls of regulars who had become her chosen family reflected a world in which she felt increasingly distant. Her mind spiraled with thoughts of her daughter's needs, especially the baby formula that had become impossible to afford. How had it come to this? The despair seeped deeper, clawing at her insides like an ice-cold hand. She glanced down at the delicate wedding ring sitting in her pocket, a piece that connected her to the love once shared with her late grandmother. Sacrificing it for a few months of formula felt like a betrayal, a heartbreaking decision intertwined with guilt and survival. But as the numbers crunched endlessly in her head, she knew it was all she had left to give. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the local pawn shop. The owner eyed her with a mix of skepticism and curiosity as she hesitantly laid the ring on the counter. It felt like stripping away a piece of her identity. Desperation gnawed at her. What would her grandmother think? Consent and security faded into the shadows, replaced by the need to keep her baby safe and healthy. The owner turned the ring over, and in that moment, the door swung open. Time seemed to stand still as Mark entered. The past flooded back, each memory sharp and clear, a promise, a future that had slipped away. Sarah? His voice cut through the silence, and her stomach dropped. Mark, she resisted the urge to recoil, tension pulsing in the air. His eyes widened in recognition, the years melting away in an instant. The ring slipped back into her pocket as the tension escalated. What are you doing here? He hesitated, searching her face, and then blurted out a flurry of words about his recent struggles at the company. I've been affected too, he said. I want to help, please. A check appeared in his hand, far greater than the ring's worth, an offer that mocked her pride. The veins in her temple throbbed. Suddenly, she wondered why now. Did he truly want to help her and Lily, or merely alleviate the guilt of leaving? Desperation clashed with her lingering love. I can't accept this, she heard herself say, uncertain of her voice. Please, he urged. You deserve better than this. Was it genuine? Or was it calculated, a desperate attempt to assuage his conscience? As anger mixed with longing, confusion consumed her. A champion or a betrayal? Before she could respond, the door burst open again, heralding an unexpected visitor. A friend from another life walked in, an unwelcome reality poised to unravel everything. This new arrival, unaware of the fractured relationship playing out, stepped forward with an urgent message that could topple the fragile balance Sarah had just begun to establish. Her heart raced, muscle tension coiling tighter as the weight of her decisions threatened to crush her. Would she confront Mark? Would she sacrifice more than she already had? Time would tell, but for now, uncertainty reigned and everything was about to change. The unexpected visitor stepped into the pawn shop, exuding an air of urgency that snapped Sarah out of her dazed state. Her heart raced as she recognized Sam, her childhood friend, his face flushed with worry. Sarah, we need to talk, he said, glancing briefly at Mark before focusing solely on her. It's concerning your mother. Her breath hitched, panic unfurling in her chest. What about her? She's in the hospital, Sam said, his voice steady but laced with concern. I don't have all the details, but she fell and it doesn't sound good. The world around her seemed to shatter. Her knees felt weak, and she gripped the counter for support. For all her struggles, her mom had been a constant rock, the one who always believed in her, always ready with a comforting hug during tough times. Just then, Mark took a cautious step closer, the check still in his hand, now feeling like a weighty anchor tethering her to a reality she didn't want to confront. You don't have to do this alone, Sarah. Let me help, he urged again, his intensity sharper now. She felt a surge of indignation, battling with the concern that gnawed at her gut. He had left her when things got difficult, and now he wanted to swoop in with a check and save the day? But deep down, she recognized an undeniable truth: she might need help navigating this new catastrophe. I can't accept anything from you, Mark. Not now. Why not? He pressed, frustration creeping into his tone. This isn't about us, this is about Lily, about your mom exactly. She snapped, the barrage of emotions bubbling to the surface. You don't get to just stroll back into my life when it's convenient for you. My daughter deserves better than a paternal figure who disappears. Mark's face darkened but then softened. You're right. I want to be the man you thought I was, but you have to let me in. The world around her felt suffocating, a whirlwind of old wounds and fresh fears, but with a new reality looming over her, the urgency for action consumed her. Look, I have to go, she said, forcing the words out as she stepped towards the door, ready to face the reality of her mother's situation. I'll figure this out. I always do. As she moved to leave, Sam caught her arm. Sarah, wait, he said, concern etched on his brow. You'll need help. Let's get to the hospital together. Moments ticked by, and she could feel the pressing weight of her choices. The loyalty toward her mother clashed violently with the fragility of her own circumstances. Torn between responsibilities for her daughter and obligations to her family, doubt marred her judgment. But seeing Sam's unwavering support rekindled a flicker of determination within her. I appreciate it, Sam, but I need to face this head-on, for everyone. I can't let fear govern my choices. I won't. She stepped out into the busy street, the sound of voices crashing like waves around her. Each step felt heavier but also more liberating as she took the reins of her predicament, ready to confront the complications ahead. Yet, as she walked away from the pawn shop, she felt an unsettling pang of trepidation. How would she manage her mother's situation, her daughter's needs, and her tumultuous past with Mark? The enormity of it all collided within her, creating a maelstrom of confusion and conviction. And as she glanced back, she caught a glimpse of Mark through the glass. He had lowered his head, the pain of her rejection etched across his face, a silent reminder of what they both stood to lose. The silence echoed in her mind, the future was replete with uncertainty. Could she pull through this time? What would it take for her to defy her own fears and reach for an empowered life? As she approached the hospital doors, a new realization dawned upon her: survival is one thing, but thriving was an entirely different challenge. At that moment, an urgency coursed through her. The time had come to confront more than just external challenges. She needed to redefine who she was becoming. Fear, guilt, and shame be damned. But an unsettling thought flickered across her mind: what if the past had more hold over her than she realized? With every breath, the shadows of her past seemed to loom larger, and she knew the moment of truth was coming. How many more sacrifices would she make before she found her true self? The hospital corridor stretched out like a daunting labyrinth, each echoing step amplifying Sarah's anxiety. The overhead fluorescent lights buzzed, but their glare was overshadowed by the swirling panic at the pit of her stomach. She had always envisioned her mother as invincible, the very embodiment of strength and resilience, yet now she found herself doubting the unshakable foundation of the only stability she had known. Approaching the reception desk, Sarah realized she was standing at a threshold that symbolized far more than her mother's health. It was a gateway to her own growth, a complex intersection of familial duty and personal aspirations. Sam had insisted on coming along, his steady presence removing some of the weight bearing down on her, and for that, she was grateful. Taking a deep breath, she forged ahead, resolve tightening her grip with every step. When she reached the counter, the nurse looked up with a mix of sympathy and professionalism, which only intensified Sarah's nerves. "I'm here to see my mother, Lily Stevens," she said, forcing her voice to maintain composure despite the tremor of vulnerability beneath. Room 307, the nurse replied, sparing a fleeting glance before returning to her paperwork. Thank you, Sarah muttered, her mind racing with worries, not just about her mother but how this experience might shift her own path going forward. As she walked down the corridor, each room seemed to reflect an unshakable truth: everyone arrived there carrying their own burdens. This was her crucible, a chance to confront not only her mother's fragile state but her own fragile sense of self. She reached room 307, pausing briefly to gather her thoughts. Her hand hovered above the door handle, grappling with conflicting emotions. Could she be strong enough to face her mother's reality? Could she finally accept the support from those around her, or would her pride force her to carry the weight alone? Inside, the room was dimly lit. Her mother lay in the hospital bed, a fragile form surrounded by sterile white sheets and the beeping of machines. A sudden rush of tears threatened to spill, but she willed them back. Now wasn't the time for weakness. She needed clarity both for herself and for her mother. "Mom," Sarah said softly, moving closer, hesitating just before touching her mother's hand. The warmth of her skin sparked memories, evoking a wave of longing intertwined with fear. This was not just about her mother anymore. It was about understanding her familial ties, unraveling the expectations that had governed her decisions all along. For so long, Sarah had carried her past like a heavy cloak of shame. After her father left, it was her mother who kept them afloat, teaching her resilience. But there was also fear in that lesson: fear of inadequacy, fear of losing the last bastion of happiness she clung to. Now, standing on the precipice of potential loss, she felt the urge to finally break free and redefine what strength meant for her own life. As Sarah sat by her mother's side, she felt a flicker of determination igniting within. Maybe she could have the life she craved, not just as a daughter, not just as a mother, but as an independent woman who could stand on her own, one who could reach for power through vulnerability. Suddenly, her phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, breaking through her thoughts. It was a message from Mark. "Hoping to hear from you. I'm here if you need me. Please don't shut me out." The wave of emotion that surged through her was staggering. On one hand, his concern tugged at familiar insecurities; on the other, it opened the doors to a promise of reconciliation. With uncertainty woven tightly into hope, Sarah had to confront a decision that could shape not just her future, but her entire perspective on love, forgiveness, and self-empowerment. Could she extend compassion to both her mother and Mark, all while carving out her own identity in a world that seemed determined to push her back? The realization struck like thunder: she couldn't just survive this moment, she needed to thrive and find the self make way for her dreams. But how would her decisions ripple into the lives of those she cared about? As the reality of her choices loomed ahead, the questions felt more pressing than ever. What could become of her relationships if she dared to rewrite her narrative? And, more importantly, how would this moment define the woman she aspired to be? The sterile air of the hospital room hung heavy, suffocating yet charged with opportunity. As Sarah settled into the chair beside her mother's bed, she felt each machine's rhythmic beep sync with her racing heart. The flickering fluorescent light overhead cast an unsettling glow on the stark white walls, reminding her of the fragility enveloping them both. This was no longer just about her mother's health; it marked the dawn of a pivotal transformation for Sarah, one that required her to confront the specter of her past head-on. A profound resolve washed over her. She had witnessed her mother rise from the ashes of her father's abandonment, modeling resilience that felt both inspiring and intimidating. But now, it was Sarah's turn to unearth her own strength. The years of self-doubt and fear had cumulatively shaped a cocoon around her, but in this vulnerable moment, she was ready to break free. Gazing at the frail figure of her mother, she recalled the times she had silenced her own aspirations, always prioritizing familial duties over her personal ambitions. "It's time to give yourself permission," she thought, an inner voice finally breaking through the layers of guilt and hesitation. A later life epiphany sent a tremor coursing through her: perhaps embracing vulnerability would uncover latent strength she never recognized within herself. A blend of trepidation and excitement churned in her gut as she recalled Mark's message. Despite his inconsistent support, the flicker of hope he offered craved her attention. Would she invite him back into her life? Answering that question required an honesty she had yet to cultivate. Being vulnerable could mean risking disappointment, she mused, weighing the familiar dread of disappointment against the possibilities of growth and reconnection. "Mom," she spoke softly, the fear of her mother's frailty mingling with her desire for their relationship to evolve. Looking down, she took a deep breath. What if we abandon our old patterns? The question hung in the air, and she secretly hoped for a spark of acknowledgement or insight from her mother, even in her current state. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words and shared histories. Sarah's skin prickled, igniting introspection. What a paradox it was to realize that each choice she made mattered, not just for herself but for the family she cherished. It was a call to action, a gentle push toward acknowledgement that her identity wasn't solely defined by her mother's trials or triumphs. In that intimate moment, Sarah reached for her mother's hand, the warmth imparting comfort and courage. She closed her eyes and imagined a future where she was more than just a daughter in a crisis, where she could reclaim her narrative and embrace her aspirations fully. How could she carve out her own space, construct her own identity, without the looming shadow of expectation? As she lingered in the quiet, a thought struck her: her unique journey and aspirations needed validation. Confronting her shortcomings would ultimately serve not just herself, but also the women in her life, past and future. They all needed to witness resilience, the kind that emerges from recognizing one's own struggles. As the weight of her resolution settled in, she opened her eyes, a spark igniting. It was a radical idea: she could become the architect of her destiny, grounding herself in a new understanding of strength. She wouldn't just navigate her mother's health crisis. She would transform this experience into a crucible of personal growth. Determined, Sarah took out her phone and, with trembling hands, typed a brief reply to Mark. "Let's talk. I need to figure some things out." The moment the message sent, she felt an exhilarating mix of fear and anticipation surge through her. With every decision she was making, whether it was reaching out to Mark or stepping into her mother's reality, she was choosing to align her past with her ambitions for the future. In that charged stillness, she recognized that navigating the complexities of her relationships was just the beginning. Each thread she would weave from this moment onward could entangle hope and challenge. The decision to confront her fears meant she could overcome anything. Yet a lingering worry tugged at her. As she forged ahead, would she be strong enough to handle the fallout of her choices? Would she find support in the very places she yearned for, or would their depths prove equally treacherous? The uncertainty loomed, a backdrop to the awakening resolve blossoming within her. The true test of her evolution lay ahead, a threshold she felt ready to cross. How far could she go in forging her own path, and at what cost? The sound of her mother's breathing was a reminder of the fragility that surrounded them, and Sarah shifted her focus back to the present moment. It was time for her to step beyond the confines of expectation and step into her own narrative. The hospital room had become an unexpected catalyst, igniting a desire within her that had long been dormant. Her thoughts danced around direction and vulnerability as she envisioned Mark's reaction to her message. Would he recognize the shift in her, or would he revert to the past, to the comfort of their old dynamics? The unknown loomed large, and she pulled in a steadying breath to quiet the storm within. As she settled more into the chair, flexing her hands in her lap, another realization took shape: her ambitions could no longer be a footnote in her life. Instead, they had to be at the forefront of her existence, a definitive shift she was ready to embrace. What had kept her tethered for so long, fear, guilt, the desire to be the ideal daughter, was now beckoning to be examined, confronted, and ultimately released. The beeping machine surrounded her like a steady rhythm, encouraging her to move forward. With each beep, she felt an echo of her undulating emotions: fear of the uncertain, yet determination like never before. She could not continue living in the shadows of her past. Her mother had fought to reclaim her identity after her father's departure, and that act of reclamation now served as a guiding light for Sarah. Thoughts of creativity and ambition swirled in her mind. She could pursue a career in design, something she had brushed aside under the weight of familial obligations. Maybe, just maybe, she could start a blog sharing her journey, her evolving relationship with her mother, her pursuit of self-identity, and, importantly, the lessons learned through vulnerability. She imagined the empowerment that could swell from confronting her fears publicly. Yet, the specter of her self-doubt returned, gripping her with icy fingers. What if no one was interested? What if she failed? As her mind raced, she caught herself spiraling. These are only thoughts, I can change them, she reminded herself and forced her breathing to slow. She needed to remember that everyone who thrived started somewhere. Many of them faced fear and doubt but chose to act nonetheless. A soft knock disrupted her introspection, lifting her gaze to the door. It was a nurse, with a gentle smile and eyes that held understanding. "How's everything going?" she asked as she entered, bringing a sudden warmth into the chilly room. "Just thinking," Sarah replied, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. "About growth. Change." The nurse nodded knowingly and came closer, placing a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Just remember, vulnerability can lead to strength. You're doing more than just helping your mom, you're helping yourself too." A burst of clarity surged within Sarah, fortifying her resolve. She was on the cusp of creating something wholly personal. This journey wasn't just about her mother's healing. It was about her own restoration, too. She had teetered on the edge of her potential for too long, and now it felt like a bright landscape beckoning her forward. As the nurse exited, Sarah's phone vibrated on her lap, a message from Mark. Her stomach knotted at the prospect of engaging with him, yet in that moment, she felt emboldened. The message could define a new chapter, their relationship either evolving or concluding. With tentative courage, she opened the text and began typing. "When can we meet? I think we need to talk face to face." A knot of anxiety twisted in her gut. The request was pivotal, a provocation of sorts. Clearing her mind, she pressed send, realization dawning that with this simple act, she had asserted herself. However, the weight of what lay ahead lingered, knotting her insides. Would he respond positively or retreat into the ghosts of their shared history? As she waited, anticipation grew, and moments stretched like hours. Would she find the courage to face the future, not just with Mark but within herself? The stakes were high, and Sarah was acutely aware that the upcoming conversation could redefine everything. The screen lit up again, and her heart raced as she saw his name. In an instant, doubts retreated, leaving her anxious yet exhilarated. The moment of truth was near. Would she be ready to confront not only Mark but also the parts of herself that had long remained unsaid? The text message from Mark glowed brightly against the muted tones of the hospital room, pulling Sarah from her swirling thoughts. It read, "I do like that. Can we meet tomorrow afternoon?" Her heart leapt at the invitation, the possibility sparking a fresh wave of courage in her chest. Yet, the second half of the message lingered ominously behind her excitement. "Is everything okay?" She knew that it wasn't just a matter of asking about her mother's health. Mark was perceptive, he sensed there was something more to her earlier message. It was time for directness, but clarity consumed by uncertainty made her hesitate. What if revealing her thoughts and feelings only created further distance? The beeping machines resumed their soft chant, grounding her again as she wrestled with her fear of potential rejection. She couldn't rehash old patterns, fall back into the rhythm of avoidance that had characterized their previous chats. It wasn't fair to herself, or to him. She could be more than a reluctant participant in their relationship. Fingertips pressing lightly against her phone, she needed to make a choice, either risk opening her heart or default to familiar silence. After a few rapid indecisive moments, she began typing again, fueled by her newfound resolve. "I've been doing some thinking. About us and what we want. Can we talk about everything?" In her mind, Sarah replayed moments of hesitation that had typically plagued her decision-making. This time felt different. Perhaps it was the hospital room, a space suffused with life's impermanence, that had cracked open her shell, but she imagined life without the burden of her doubts influencing her intentions. She pressed send and felt a brief liberation, as if shedding an old skin. An immediate response came, wrapped tightly in warmth. "I really appreciate you opening up. Let us meet at our old cafe. It'll be good to see you." Despite her stomach nodding at the familiarity of the location, they had shared countless memories there. It felt vital to confront their past instead of evading it. As she gathered her belongings to leave for the hospital lobby, Sarah's mind wandered back to her ambitions. She envisioned the blog she had acknowledged earlier, echoing her desire to communicate her journey authentically. Despite her fears whispering of inadequacies and failure, she felt a sense of urgency bubbling beneath the surface. This wasn't merely about sharing with others, it was about tethering her identity to something greater than herself, a pursuit of creativity that would ultimately shine light on her evolving narrative. With each deliberate step taken through the sterile hall, she felt a rebellious surge. The soft chatter of other families mingled with the mechanical hum of machines, forming a backdrop for her thoughts. She made mental notes of profound moments during her mother's hospitalization that she could transform into anecdotes for her blog. Each feeling transformed into raw material, waiting to be molded into a story that was entirely her own. Yet, an ire ignited as another consideration crossed her mind. Facing Mark meant confronting how she had diminished her feelings and their dynamic for far too long. Would he embrace the new Sarah, one determined to break free from the past? Or would he resist? Stepping out into the sunlight, its warmth absorbing the lingering chill from the hospital walls, she knew her next encounter could change everything. As she prepared to meet Mark, a question tightened like a taut string in her chest. What would she reveal, and would it be enough for the transformation she desperately sought? Her phone buzzed again, looking forward to it. "Let us meet at 2 p.m. A wave of anticipation crashed over her, blending excitement and trepidation. She was taking a chance not just for their relationship but for her own evolution. Everything was on the line, and she finally felt ready to step across that threshold. The stakes were clear now. The conversation would not merely be about them but about her, and everything she was no longer willing to let go. Unexplored. As the time approached, Sarah lingered at the intersection of possibility and fear. She would soon confront the parts of herself she had left unspoken for years. In that determination, she felt a profound truth stirring within, change coursed through her veins, and she was on the brink of embracing it fully and unapologetically. But just as she prepared to leave, a realization struck her. While confronting Mark was essential, what potential revelations awaited her beyond that meeting? What unknown depths of her own psyche had she yet to explore? As she took a deep breath and walked towards the cafe, she sensed that the future held layers she had never considered before, each one steeped in the promise of disclosure and growth. The cafe's familiar entrance loomed ahead, a portal to both comfort and confrontation. As Sarah stepped inside, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wrapped around her, drawing her deeper into the space. She spotted Mark at their usual table, his face shifting from a tentative smile to concern as he met her gaze. The warmth that radiated from him was undeniable, yet she could feel the weight of the conversation they needed to have pressing against her chest like the thick air of summer. "Hey," Mark greeted, moving aside an empty chair. He gestured for her to sit, an invitation that felt both welcoming and intimidating. "Hi." Her voice trembled slightly. This was not just a casual cafe visit, this was the ground where they would attempt to unravel the tension that had built silently between them. The small talk about days gone by skirted around the edges of their emotional landscape, the light chatter momentarily distracting Sarah from the impending heaviness. Yet, as she sipped her coffee, the taste soured her stomach. The familiar sip shouldn't tea feel so unsettling. "How's your mom?" Mark asked, concern etched in every word. A brief pause hitched in her throat, and the lump of vulnerability curdled into something sharper. Did he truly want to know, or was this just a polite gesture to fill the silence? Instead of sidestepping the question, she chose honesty. She's okay, but it's tough. I don't think I'm really okay, either. His brow furrowed, and the air shifted around them. What do you mean? That was the opening she needed. She took a deep breath, feeling the pulse of courage pushing her forward. I've been thinking a lot about us. The words felt heavy but necessary, like laying the first brick in her new foundation. And, he prompted gently, eyes searching hers. I've realized that I've held back so much, avoiding conversations that matter. I feel I don't want to keep pretending everything is fine just because it's easier. Uncertainty buzzed through her, and for a moment, she regretted the plunge. But she pressed on, the clarity from earlier urging her to stay the course. I didn't express how I feel about our relationship, what I need from it. Mark's face remained composed, but his silence spoke volumes. She could almost hear the gears turning in his mind, clearly processing her shift. This was the pivotal moment, the point of no return. What do you need? His question was simple yet cutting, unearthing layers she had hardly scratched the surface of. I need to be heard, to be understood. No more brushing aside feelings because they might unsettle the status quo. I'm tired of avoiding real discussions. Her heart pounded as energy coursed through her body, igniting a spark of rebellion against her ingrained habits of silence. I want us to be real. I want to embrace everything about us, the good, the bad. But I'm scared you won't want the same. Mark's expression shifted, uncertainty deepening his gaze. A mix of surprise and concern danced between them as he processed her words. There was a moment where the noise of the cafe faded, just the two of them against a sea of onlookers, and in that stillness, she felt the vulnerability in her chest pulled taut. I'm not going to lie, Sarah. That scares me too, but your honesty, it means a lot. I think we both have walls up, and breaking them down could hurt. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want you to suffer because of me. It felt surreal as they navigated the tumultuous currents of shared fears and unspoken hopes. The surge of authenticity invigorated her, igniting a passion for the raw truth of her emotions. Yet, as she connected with her own needs, she sensed a pulsing realization deep within there was more to their dynamic they had yet to uncover. As their conversation deepened, Sarah caught glimpses of vulnerability flashing across Mark's countenance, the interest to open himself, but still a hesitation. What was he hiding? What had he ever bottled up in fear of her reactions? But just as the conversation began to take root, a question lodged itself in her mind, freezing the moment in place. What if this was only the beginning? What if their walls were stronger than anticipated, obscuring truths that could unravel even deeper connections? With words still lingering, the true depth of her journey had yet to emerge. As the well of courage bubbled beneath her exterior, she realized that each revelation was merely a precursor to something far more profound, both for herself and for their relationship. Soon, Sarah found herself grappling with another unsettling thought: would they break free together, or would the walls they confronted only further entrap them? The answer lay ahead, shrouded in uncertainty, waiting to be unveiled. Sarah leaned back in her chair, heart still racing as she processed the conversation. Mark's hesitation lingered in the air, filling the space with an unspoken gravity. It was no longer just about addressing their relationship, it was about unearthing hidden aspects of themselves, parts that had laid dormant beneath layers of routine and fear. Would their bond withstand this scrutiny, or would it buckle under the weight of truth? As Mark broke the silence, he balanced his coffee cup uncertainly. I realize that I've been holding back too. It's like we've both been waiting for the other to take the first step. His honesty struck her, and she couldn't help but feel a swell of hope. Maybe we need to actively dismantle those walls, she suggested. The idea bubbled to the surface, the idea of collaboration rather than opposition, a teamwork approach to their emotional struggles. Dismantle, huh? Mark chuckled lightly, but Sarah could see the seriousness in his eyes. We should probably build a better framework in the first place. A small smile tugged at her lips. Yes, first a framework, then we can figure out what to do with the wreckage." They both laughed, and the tension began to lighten, if only a little. In that moment, the doors to Sarah's introspection swung wide open. She had always been an introspective person, but rarely had she shared that introspection with others. Over time, she imposed restrictions on her emotional expression, creating a chasm that now demanded attention. Why had she allowed herself to retreat so deeply? "What about you, Mark?" she pressed. The tide of vulnerability stirred inside her, asking for reciprocation. "What fears do you bring to the table?" Mark hesitated, brow furrowed, and she could feel the careful consideration weighing on him. "I worry that I won't be enough emotionally, professionally. I think that's where my walls come from. If I let you see the heart of the mess I call my life, would you stay?" His admission pierced through her, revealing the fragility that surprisingly mirrored her own. In this exchange, she felt they were starting to forge a path together, each willing to courageously tread in uncertain territory. "I'm not perfect either, Mark. But I need to understand the full spectrum of who you are, because that's what love should be," she confessed. Their eyes locked and held for a moment, each silently acknowledging that they were teetering on a precipice of change. But as exhilaration flickered within her, a dark shadow pulled at the edges of her resolve. What if the truths they unearthed were too overwhelming? What if their connection fractured under the weight of reality? Can we test what it feels like to be raw, to embrace everything, even the discomfort? Mark's voice reflected a mixture of uncertainty and excitement. "Yes," she replied, feeling emboldened. "Let us confront our fears together, without the masks we've worn for so long. After all, isn't that what growth is about?" Her heart raced as the new landscape of vulnerability stretched out before them, a place where they could explore the unknown depths of their emotions. Sarah found it strange yet thrilling to visualize this unfiltered connection, where communication transformed into a dance of shared struggles rather than solitary battles. But what if this just leads to more pain? Mark mused, concern weaving itself into his expression. "That's the risk. But is it really worse than what we've been living?" she countered, her resolve strengthening. As they delved deeper into this conversation, she could feel the unmistakable flicker of something transforming within her. Each question they posed, every layer peeled back, revealed an emerging self, raw, vibrant, and alive. But as exhilaration tugged at the corners of her heart, a new weight crept back in. If uncovering their truths meant addressing the stark realities of their imperfections, did that mean they were doing irreparable damage to everything they built? Just as the tension escalated, the cafe's hustle resumed around them, pulling Sarah back into the moment. She took a long, steadying breath, unsure of how to proceed but certain that the conversation was only beginning. Did they really have the courage to face what lay beneath? Would their newfound commitment to openness draw them closer, or expose fractures that they couldn't mend? "What's next?" Mark asked, his tone both adventurous and uncertain. A wave of determination washed over her, and she smiled through the uncertainty. "Next, we take it one step at a time. Let us promise to keep this openness, to challenge each other even when it's hard." With silent acknowledgement, they crossed the threshold into uncharted territory together, yet separately grappling with the burdens and possibilities of their evolving relationship. Yet as they ventured forward, a gnawing thought clung to her mind: what if this journey toward authenticity unearthed more than they bargained for? The afternoon light filtered through the cafe windows, casting intricate patterns on the wooden table, yet Sarah hardly noticed. Her mind was awash with possibilities and fears stemming from their new commitment. Each sip of coffee felt heavy, the comforting warmth replaced by an unsettled gripping in her stomach. The thought of opening up further sent a shiver down her spine. "What if we really dive into this?" she murmured, contemplating the weightiness of emotional exposure. She surveyed Mark's face, trying to gauge the implications of what that could mean. "For starters, let us discuss our pasts. What shaped us into who we are today?" Mark leaned in, his brow furrowing in thought. I guess I grew up afraid of judgment. My family was always chasing perfection: grades, careers, appearances. It became less about who we were and more about how we were seen. His revelation felt like a shard of glass piercing through her own guarded memories. She could relate. I've always felt that pressure too, but it stemmed from a different place: my mom's expectations. She experienced immense disappointments in her life and projected them onto me. I felt like I was living someone else's dream, constantly trying to meet goals that didn't belong to me. Their shared experiences painted a poignant picture of how their pasts had intertwined, shaping the walls they had erected around themselves. The corners of her heart, once firmly barricaded, began to soften. Taking this step is terrifying, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. What if dredging up everything just leads to old wounds being reopened? What if we hurt each other in our vulnerability? Mark sighed, and she saw the frustration on his face. It's a risk. But staying stagnant, being comfortable with mediocrity, isn't a life worth living, is it? He was right, and in that moment, Sarah realized something critical. To improve their relationship, they would both need to confront their deepest fears head-on instead of shying away. The way forward wouldn't be a clear path, it would be fraught with obstacles and discomfort. Yet, there was promise in that discomfort, a flicker of hope. We need to set some boundaries too, she proposed, her internal compass guiding her. We can share what feels comfortable but still hold space for ourselves if things become overwhelming. A visible relief washed over Mark. That's wise. We can't forget that this is a journey for both of us. The depth of their conversation spurred something inside Sarah, a drive to not only explore their shared vulnerabilities but to unearth her own buried emotions. What other fears had she harbored? What unresolved issues lay in her personal history that needed reckoning? As she processed the complexity of her evolving identity while embarking on this journey with Mark, patterns formed in her mind. She had always dismissed aspects of herself that didn't fit societal molds, particularly her knack for creative writing. Somewhere along the way, it had become an underappreciated hobby, hidden beneath layers of practicality. Perhaps it was time to resurrect it. It's funny, she interjected into their deep discussion. I used to write poetry and stories when I was younger, but I abandoned it. I thought it was impractical. Mark's eyes lit up with interest. Then why not revisit it? There's power in expression. Our past shapes us, but it doesn't have to dictate our future. His encouragement ignited a spark. Could this shared vulnerability inspire new creative avenues? As they narrowed down their focus to individual goals, Mark mentioned exploring avenues in his profession that terrified him, pitching to bigger clients, claiming roles that felt too ambitious, and challenging his capabilities head-on. Sarah nodded, aligning her own aspirations to his. She saw a moment to grow, not only in intimacy with Mark but also in her own professional landscape. I want to write, to share my voice, she proclaimed, excitement flooding her senses. Even if it's just for myself to start. She absorbed the stirs of anticipation that passed through their table, wondering if their shared journey toward authenticity might lead to greater heights than either had initially imagined. Suddenly, a sense of communal determination emerged from their conversation. But just as clarity began to wash over her, another unsettling thought intruded: were they both truly ready for the confrontation of their pasts? What of the lingering scars that could surface unexpectedly? Let's take this leap together, she suggested, heart racing again as excitement intertwined with trepidation. Their bond felt tender yet threaded with tension, and she knew that the real test lay just ahead. Agreed, but Mark hesitated, glancing away. What happens if what we find shatters the pieces we're trying to build? Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Then we'll have to decide if we can rebuild. Or if we choose to walk away. The gravity of those words settled heavily on them both. They had ventured into unknown territory, and now the stakes were rising as they confronted the unfinished chapters of their lives. With a sense of urgency bubbling within her, Sarah took a deep breath and asked, "What will you share first?" In that moment of silence that stretched between them, she could feel the unknown drawing closer, ready to reveal secrets that could either bond them or break them apart entirely. The sunlight streamed through the cafe windows, illuminating the intense expressions on Sarah and Mark's faces. As the weight of her question hung between them, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and dread constrict in her chest. This was the turning point, the moment they needed to confront their truths. Mark exhaled slowly, processing the gravity of the question. "I suppose I could share my biggest regret," he began, his voice trembling with vulnerability. "It happened during my last role when I was offered a promotion. I turned it down because I was afraid I wasn't ready. I let fear dictate my choices." Sarah felt her heart ache for the man sitting across from her, recognizing the haunting echoes of self-doubt in his confession. "That's more common than you think," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I've let fear dictate so much of my life too. I've spent years suppressing my creativity because I was terrified of failing. Finding the courage to write felt impossible." As Mark revealed the moment anxiety had seized him, Sarah started to realize how intertwined their struggles truly were. Each layer they peeled away felt like a step toward a greater reckoning. "What made you afraid?" she pressed, longing for insight. "The fear of judgment," he said, his eyes glimmering with raw honesty. "I always worried about others thinking I wasn't good enough. It's paralyzing, knowing that every move carries the risk of scrutiny." The connection they shared deepened further, and Sarah could sense Mark's struggle mirrored her own. She, too, had been a prisoner of her self-doubt, allowing it to carve paths of missed opportunities. "That means we've both been paralyzed, stuck in our own heads. The irony is that I was supposed to be leading the way for my daughter while holding back myself." "You're not alone in that," he replied, his expression softening. "We're both learning to break free of our insecurities. It's about moving forward together." As their conversation unfolded, Sarah could feel the weight of the past beginning to lift, replaced by an intoxicating promise of empowerment. "So, what do we do next?" she asked, a newfound determination surging within her. "We commit to each other," he said confidently. "To not only face our fears together but to embrace authenticity as we move forward. I want to stand by your side as you reclaim your voice. And I'll use your bravery to conquer my own." She felt a surge of warmth swell in her heart. Was this the support she had long yearned for, not just from Mark but from herself? The realization sent a ripple of satisfaction through her, and a smile broke across her face. "I'll take that leap then," she said, the empowerment filling her lungs. "I want to write and share my story. It's time to own everything about who I am." With every shared moment, the possibilities expanded. Their conversation drifted onto ideas, dreams, and aspirations, weaving a tapestry filled with potential. Mark expressed how he wished to pitch innovative ideas for big clients, while Sarah envisioned a blog, a space to share her journey of reclaiming her narrative while supporting others. Their synergy invigorated Sarah, filling the gaps where self-doubt had lingered for years. This connection they forged felt different. It was built on mutual growth and the desire to transcend their pasts, rather than remain burdened by them. Just as Sarah began processing the expanse of growth laid before her, Mark's phone buzzed at the table. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. His expression shifted subtly, and a flicker of hesitation passed his features. "What is it?" she asked, sensing a rush of apprehension. "It's my parents," he replied, a slight furrow appearing on his brow. "They're coming into town unexpectedly. I don't think I'm ready for that." "Not yet, anyway." The shared disquiet filled the space again, and Sarah reached out, placing her hand gently on his. "You control your narrative, Mark. You don't have to confront them unless you're ready." "I know," he admitted, his voice nearly a whisper. "But their expectations weigh on me. Even now. It's like they expect me to be perfect after all this time." A deep-seated recognition blossomed as Sarah contemplated that. Her own mother's expectations had been a shadow lurking over her aspirations. "Let us liberate each other, then," she suggested. "You don't owe them perfection, and I don't owe anyone the silence I've kept about my dreams. We'll hold each other accountable while we navigate our fears." With those words, the atmosphere shifted once more, wrapping them in a newfound intimacy. The supportive foundation they were eager to build felt genuinely transformative. Having both acknowledged their past and decided to let it breathe, they stood on the cusp of something significant, not just as potential partners, but as individuals on independent paths towards self-acceptance. As their conversation dwindled into a comfortable silence, a powerful thought resonated: they were no longer defined solely by those they once feared. They were emerging into the fullness of who they could be. Lost in profound contemplation, Sarah's heart swelled with an undeniable sense of purpose. It was time to embrace not only her dreams but also the act of stepping into her truth. She gently squeezed Mark's hand before sighing, "Tomorrow, I'm going to write. I feel it in my bones. This is my rebirth." Mark's face lit up, illuminating the room with his affirmation. "That's fantastic. I'll work on my pitches too." As they both left the cafe, the reality they had woven burgeoned into an expansive promise of what lay ahead. Each held their own map of individual journeys, but now they stood firmly side by side, ready to explore life without fear. Sarah's heart brimmed with an authentic realization: she was emerging, unshackled from her past, ready to evoke change in her narrative and embrace the future marked by courage, creativity, and the grace of vulnerability. This was no longer just a meeting of two friends rekindling an old flame. This was a celebration of growth, a commitment to honesty, and the beautiful chaos of being human. As they ventured into the world ahead, it was clear that this was but the beginning of transformation, connection, and the magic of becoming one's true self. In a world where every choice was a step towards self-discovery, Sarah chose to illuminate her path, and in so doing, she knew she'd found the power to not just survive, but to truly thrive. Now, take a deep breath and reflect on your own journey. Recognize that courage is calling you to step into it boldly. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these powerful stories alive. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and be part of a community that thrives on personal overcoming stories.